So today we're going to continue modeling using Fusion 360 and learning some new tools that we can use when you're modeling. It is really going to open up a whole new world because you're going to learn the revolve tool and the fillet and chamfer, which are actually a couple of very simple tools. But the revolve tool is a tool that, if mastered, can really change how you approach 3D modeling on the computer. The assignment you're looking for is activity 125. It's called Sketches, Extrusions, and Revolutions. And the very first part of that assignment just gives you some background idea on some of the things that we've done with the CAD software, which stands for Computer Animated Drafting. And eventually we'll do some things with parametric modeling. It talks to you about some other things that we've already discussed in the class, like how do you create a sketch, how do you start the sketch, what are the origins. You could look in the product documentation to tour how to do those things, but at this point I am just going to kind of scroll down to where the directions are. So there are 9 directions that we're going to do to complete the assignment. I'm actually going to take it a little bit further so that when you have to do your homework for this particular lesson, you're going to be a little bit better suited to do the homework. But ultimately, the goal today, following these 9 directions, is to make this particular design. So if I continue to scroll down, once you have this part made, you would see this, and this is what you're going to design, but you're actually going to do it twice. Once you're going to make the base, the column, and then the top, and then these holes are going to go all the way through. That's part number 1 that you'll turn in on Schoology. And then part number 2, you're going to do it with a scoop design. And the scoop design, these are not going to go all the way through, but they're going to scoop. I'll scroll down a little bit further so you can see that, where the scoop design will be kind of a little scoop that you cut out of it and not go all the way through. So when you're done, you're going to take a snip of the column with the holes and a snip of the column with scoops and turn those in. So let's get started in Fusion designing this part right here. And all I'm going to do is follow the directions that are on this page. So I'm going to slide this off to the screen next to me so I can see those directions. Get Fusion 360 up and running. First thing you should do is make sure that you save this part for what it's going to be called. And we're just going to call this Revolution Practice. And I want to make sure I save it into the folder that's going to be appropriate for it. So there we go, I'm saving it. This is a part that you will show me once you have finished it, and I will give you credit for it right away today in today's class. First step of making any part is always to start with Create and New Component. And I'm just going to keep it called Component 1. That's fine. It's right there in my browser now. Once I do that, I'm going to create a sketch. So I'm going to go up to the sketch platform, click, and I'm going to go over here to the green-red plane and click. And then I am supposed to make a 20 millimeter by 30 millimeter rectangle, but the dimensions that I have for my computer are currently in inches. So I'm going to go highlight that and make sure I change it so that it's in millimeters. That way I can do the diagram in millimeters as the directions say. So the tool that I'm going to use now that I'm in millimeters is the rectangle tool. I'm using the 2-point rectangle, and when I click on that I get the rectangle icon by my mouse. I'm going to start from the origin and just drag it up a little bit. I noticed the 30 at the bottom of my rectangle size, so I'm going to change that to 20, so I'm just going to push 20 and then hit the tab key, and that will take me over to the other side, and I'm going to say 30 and then hit enter, and I should have my 20 by 30 rectangle already drawn. Now just for the record, if we did it the old-fashioned way, I can go down here and I can stretch that out and click anywhere on the map. And then when I click on my drawing plane, I could dimension it the same way that I've done other dimensions in the past. And I can call that side 30. I can call this side 20. And I still have my 20 by 30 rectangle. So let's take a quick look at the Revolve tool. Now that I have this, I'm going to finish this sketch. And the Revolve tool is right up here. And I'm going to click on that. And when I click on that, it automatically selected what I thought I would want to select. I'm just going to delete that for now because you always have to do this little pop-up menu kind of guides you through the process. If you forget, I have to select a profile, and I only have one, so I'm going to click that. And when I do, it says that there's one selected. And then I'm going to pick an axis, And according to the directions on my other screen, the axis that I want is the 30 millimeter side. So that's the long side. So I'm going to click on select right there, and I'm going to pick that long axis right there. I'm going to click, and it revolved around that. And I did do the revolve for a complete 360 degrees. I could change that to 180, and you can see what that does. But I want my revolve to be a complete 360 degree revolution all the way around. You do not need to do this part on your screen, but once I used that sketch to do the revolve, if you notice the sketch disappeared. One of the things that I've talked about before is that sketch didn't go anywhere. It's still visible. You can turn it on and off. And I could use it to revolve in a different direction if I wanted to. So I could click on the revolve tool again. The profile was already selected for me, so I'm going to select my axis by clicking on axis. And I'm going to click on this other little blue axis right there. And in this case, when it revolved, I'll turn that sketch point off. It revolved the other direction, and it cut all that shape away. You do not have to do that. I'm actually going to go back and edit by right-clicking and hitting edit feature, because instead of cutting, I could join. And now that does kind of an interesting shape too, because now I've joined those two revolutions, and that's an interesting little thing to look at. But this is the power of understanding the revolve tool. It's really, really powerful tool. I'm just going to delete this revolution because I don't want it there at all. I'm going back to following the directions that were on my screen. I have revolved on the top. So on the top view, I'm going to draw a sketch, and I'm going to use a slightly different sketching tool. That's what's in your quick menu up here. By the way, if you ever lose something off of this, you can right click and say reset all of the toolbar, and it will reset everything back to the default position. So instead of using one of these tools, I'm going to click on create, go down to rectangle, and I notice there's three options. The 2-point rectangle is what's in the toolbar. The 3-point rectangle, we can talk about at a different time. I'm going to use this center rectangle, which is going to fix the center point to a spot. So I'm going to click that. Come down here and start at the origin and just drag it out, and if you notice, it goes in all directions at the same time. So since I want this to be a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter, I'm going to hit 10, then tab, then 10, enter, and everything should already be black and everything should already be fixed. And at this point, this sketch is done since everything is constrained. If I click on the home button, it'll spin it around so that I can see where things are. I'm going to extrude that little mark by clicking on the extrude button, and it says to select a profile, so I'm going to select this profile, and I could drag it up, and that would be extruding it in an additive method. I could push it through, and that would be creating a hole that goes all the way through. Example, one of the parts you have to make today is supposed to have holes that go all the way through. So you could just use the extrude tool to drag those holes and make them go all the way through. I am actually going to hit cancel for just a second because, again, just things you can do, you can extrude this slightly different too. And when you do that, you'd get those different shapes. But I do want to extrude this small square as an additive extrude. And it says to go up 15 millimeters. So I'm going to make it go up 15 millimeters. I'm going to hit OK. And there's this square peg sticking out of the part. I'm actually almost done with this part at this point. We've used the revolve tool a couple of different ways. We use the extrude and drawing some extra shapes. I'm going to go to this one. This one's called the fillet. And when I select fillet, I'm going to add a 5 millimeter fillet to these edges right down here at the bottom. So you see when I hold over the edge, it's trying to select that little edge right there. I could use this face and it would choose different part to fillet, but when I select that line and I need to put in 5, you'll see what the fillet tool does. It takes that side of it and kind of smooths it out so that it's one nice smooth surface. I can do that to this side right here where I click on it, say that I want to fillet by clicking on the fillet icon, and then type 5 millimeters here, and it's going to do the same thing there. You can do more than one side at a time by holding down the control key, selecting the edges that you would like to fillet, and then you can do them both at the same time. So now that both of those are selected, I can get the fillet tool. I could make them both be 5 millimeters. And there we go. Well on my way to getting the part to look the way the part's supposed to. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to fillet the 4 parts on the top. This wasn't part of the original design, but why not? I'm holding down the control key, click, 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 fillet, and I'm just going to make this one be like a 1 millimeter fillet. Just to smooth out that top edge so it's not quite so rough. The last tool we're supposed to learn today when we're doing this whole process is the chamfer tool. To use the chamfer tool, I first noticed that it's not in any of the quick icons that are up at the top. It's under the Modify tab, so we're going to click on Modify, and chamfer is right there. According to the directions, we're supposed to do something that is 5 millimeters at 30 degrees. So the part we're going to chamfer is this part right down here at the bottom. I'm going to click that edge, and you can see some things changed over here, but I don't see anything here where I can put in a degree. Obviously I could put in 5 millimeters right there. So I do notice that there's a couple of drop down menus. I could try that one. I still don't see a spot to put in a degree. And if I actually just read them, I can see where there's an option for a distance and an angle. And since the directions are telling me to do 5 millimeters at 30 degrees, it's pretty logical that that's the one I want. So I'm going to do 5 millimeters at 30 degrees. And when I do that, it's going to create the chamfer that is 5 millimeters at 30 degrees. I'm just going to zoom in on this left side, and what I should have is a very good representation of that part right there. Where the top is like that, we got our fillet, we got our chamfer, and in theory at this point this part is done. But like I said, I did want to do a couple of extra things just to show you some things that could help you with today's assignment. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create an extra little sketch on the top here. So I'm going to click that surface. I'm going to go over here to create sketch, and when it zooms in, I'm just going to use the 2-point rectangle. And when I use the 2-point rectangle, I am not going to start right at the origin. I'm actually going to start a little bit below the origin, click, and I'm going to drag it up to say about here or so, click, and now I need to dimension this, and all 4 sides are blue because I didn't start from anywhere that the computer knows. So the first thing I'm going to do is reference this A line somewhere to the origin. So I'm going to use the dimensioning tool. Here's the origin. It's the only thing the computer knows. Click on that, click on this line, and I think 2.5 is great. So 2.5 seems good. Now that I know where that line is, I can come from this line back to the other blue line. I can't reference this blue line to the origin because, believe it or not, you can't put a 0 distance in. The computer won't understand that. So since I went over to here, I can select this and go right back over to the other blue line, and I do know that that's going to be 2.5, but it will dimension the other side. So now the computer knows where both of those sides are. To get to this, I'm going to have to start from the origin and click, go up to that blue line and drag it off, so that's 1 millimeter, hit enter. And once again, now that I have that side dimensioned, I can use that to figure out where that is. So if I go from there down to there, the computer will say, oh, that's 2 millimeters, and that is perfect. All 4 sides are now black. So this dimension is referencing where this line, this dimensioning is referencing where this one is, and so on. I'm going to finish that sketch and zoom out a little bit so that you can see what I've done. And this will be an interesting little revolve that I'm going to do. I am going to use the revolve tool. I'm going to select the profile I want to revolve, which is that little rectangle. And I'm going to select the axis that I want to revolve, and I want to revolve it around that axis close to the center. And it automatically selected that it thinks I want to cut. I'm going to leave it like that for just a second so that you can see what that does. It makes this nice, neat little half moon thing. It actually has a name. It's called a woodruff key. And sometimes that's used to lock two parts together, where one side would look like that and the other side would be the reverse of it. Just so I can show you the reverse, I am going to right click on the extrusion I just did, right click, edit the feature, and instead of cutting this, I'm going to join it. And when I join it, I get the exact same profile, just the reverse of it. So one side would fit into the other side and it would be a really tight fit, and those two parts would be locked together then through the use of the woodruff key. It's very common in axles and engines, especially lawnmowers and small machines, to have a woodruff key that is this half moon shape to lock two interlocking parts together. So you saw the cut feature and the extrude. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom of this part. So I'm going to flip the part over to get to the bottom. I'm just going to make sure that I can see the bottom nice and flat. So this is great. I'm going to draw a sketch on the bottom. So I click the bottom, click on the sketch tool. Here's my sketching plane. And I'm going to draw two circles. One circle I'm going to put right here at the top. And let's make that one say 5 millimeters. And then I'm going to put one more down here. So select the circle tool. And I'm just going to go 2.5 millimeters and hit enter. And so I now have two circles drawn. If you notice, both of them are blue. And the reason that both of them are blue is because the computer has no idea where those circles are in space. So it does know that one's 5 and one's 2.5. But if I use the dimensioning tool and start from the origin, I can tell it where that 5 is. That's fine, 8 millimeters, it doesn't really matter, I just need to dimension it. And if I start from the origin and I go down here, again, I don't really care where it is, apparently 6 millimeters would be fine. They're still blue, and that's because the computer still doesn't know where they are left and right of the origin. So like, for example, if I hit escape, it knows this is always 8 millimeters away, but if I drag it, I can drag it all the way around and it stays 8 millimeters away from the origin. It just doesn't know, is it here, is it here, is it here? I do want it to be directly above the origin. So a good tool to use to tell it that two things are directly above one another is the vertical align constraint. Click, select the origin, select my circle, and they're now vertically aligned. That circle has to remain above the origin. If I click on the origin, click on this circle, now those two are vertically constrained and this part can't move around anymore. Last thing I want to show you here is that at this point I could finish the sketch. I could extrude those all the way through, because that's a great way to make a hole in something, is to go all the way through then. And I now have a hole that goes all the way through my part. That is something you need to do in tonight's homework. I am going to delete that hole. I want my sketch to be visible again, so I need to go over here to my sketches. And that sketch 4, I want that sketch to be visible so that I can work with it. I'm actually going to edit that sketch. Right click, edit sketch. Because what I did before I wasn't quite done with. I'm going to take this line and go from here all the way down to there. And if you notice, the line is blue. So that means the computer has no idea where that line is in space. So a couple things I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some parts away. I'm using the trim tool. I'm trimming this middle part of the line. So basically what I did is I just cut my circle in half. I'm going to cut this side of the circle away, and I'm going to cut this side of the circle away. So now I have two semicircles. And the computer still has no idea where that blue line is. Using the dimensioning tool, I'm going to go on the outside of the circle to the inside of the circle. Apparently not. Try that one more time. Go from the outside to the inside, and that should be 2.5. Oh, there you go. So I'm using the dimension that I already know to tell it where the other part is. And if you notice, by doing that, it also dimensioned the other one for me. So now that everything's black, I'm going to finish the sketch and use the revolve tool. Right now the computer does not know what I want to revolve. I'm going to revolve that and at the same time that. So I actually selected two profiles to revolve simultaneously. The axis I'm going to select by clicking on the select axis is that half circle. Click. And the computer automatically assumed I wanted to cut. So what that would do is it would cut a little hole out of the part, or I could say join, and then it makes it into almost like a little ball. I do want this one to be cut, so I'm going to leave it as cut and hit OK. Once you have this part done, if the computer will allow you to save, you can go ahead and save it. If not, this is what I want to see on your screen. Oop, I don't need those sketches visible anymore, so I'm going to turn those off because I don't need to see those. But I have two scoops on the bottom, a woodruff key on the top. That should help you with today's assignment. Show this to me so you can get points. And then once you're done, go to Schoology, find the assignment. That is 125, Sketches, Extrusions, and Revolution. And you should make this part. The first time you do it, you're going to take these holes all the way through, snip that, show a picture of me of it on Schoology. And then the second time, you can take what those holes were, and instead of having them as holes that go all the way through, you're going to create scoops using a similar method to what I just did. That's going to give you a little scoop in there and turn that in.